Most people don't. Defeating dark occult dialectic cults once and for all. These are dialectical cults, pushing people with one wing into total extermination, and with the other wing coming around from the other side and pushing them into the same extermination camp. It's just a dialectic, and it leads to the same place. Don't fall for the dialectic. We have to change our mind. We have to rise above, educationally and morally rise above these ideologies. Here's the worst possible mindset that one can take in the modern world. And you hear this all the time by morons. It can't happen today. Let me get the inflection right. It can't happen today. I think I got that right. I think that exactly sounds like these people, right? Not only can't it not happen today, it can happen today. And not only can it happen today, ladies and gentlemen, it is happening today. It is occurring right now while we sit here. The dark occult sorcerers have manipulated human consciousness into a dialectic by which they choose their death sentence. Whether they choose it through the right arm or the left arm is absolutely of no consequence or meaning. They are choosing self-extermination by continuing to even believe in the ideologies that lead to the formation of these cults. Collectivism, materialism, secularism, postmodernism, moral relativism, and on and on. We have to stamp these out in the mind and in the heart and in the soul. They can't be eradicated even through violent revolution. We need a transformation of consciousness to take place within. Or these sorcerers are going to rule over us forever. And it isn't really even going to be forever because they'll extinct us eventually. They're going to get 1 billion people in the next human reset. And there's my prognostication. That's my prediction for the world. In the next human reset that they implement, and they're going to implement it successfully, they're going to kill off a minimum of 1 billion souls. You mark my words. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, it has always been this way, and it's no different today. We are not different from the Nazis and the Soviets and the communists and the Bolsheviks, etc. We are cut from the same moral cloth, or immoral cloth as the case should be. Most people today think in an overly optimistic and quite unrealistic fashion when attempting to compare the modern moral state of human beings to those who conducted and took part in the human atrocities of the Nazi and communist regimes. The truth of the matter is far more sobering. The vast majority of people today are no different at all in their immoral state of consciousness when compared to the totalitarians of the past. We are raising children in that capacity. We are advocating for these immoral systems of behavior. We are not speaking out against evil when we see it blatantly occurring in our world. They are cut from the exact same immoral cloth, and there is an abundance of evidence supporting this very sad and very unfortunate conclusion, and I'm going to present some of that evidence. One of the first things people should really look at to show we're in no better of a moral situation than the Nazis were is the Milgram experiments. The Milgram experiments were a series of social psychology experiments on obedience to authority figures conducted by psychologist Stanley Milgram. They measured the willingness of participants in this psychological study to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting with their personal conscience. Participants were led to believe that they were assisting in an unrelated experiment in which they had to administer electric shocks to an unseen learner that was behind a curtain or a wall divide. These fake electric shocks gradually increased to levels that would have been fatal had they been administered for real. The experiment found that a very high proportion of subjects would fully obey their given orders, with every single participant in the study going up to 300 volts of electricity, which could permanently damage a human being's central nervous system, but not completely kill them. And at least 65%, again, very close to the numbers that I've measured in social experiments regarding moral relativism, about 2/3, even slightly over 2/3. In this instance, 65% of participants went all the way up to the deadly shock of 450 volts, which would kill a human being if administered for real. The Milgram experiments began only 3 months after the start of the trial of German Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann, who was very instrumental in the extermination campaign of the Jews. Milgram devised this psychological study to explain the psychology of genocide and to answer the question, were the accomplices of the Holocaust, quote, just following orders, or were they morally culpable for their actions? They were following their orders, and they were still morally culpable, is the truth of that, the answer to that question. The Milgram experiments were repeated many times all around the world since the original experiments back in, I believe it was the 1960s or 70s, probably the 60s. And right up to contemporary times, these experiments have been repeated with statistically identical results today. Nothing has changed. We're no more moral than the Nazis were. We're no more moral than the Soviets were. Humanity hasn't changed a bit. It hasn't graduated from its spiritual infancy. It hasn't understood what true morality is and not to support violence and coercion of governmental systems. We are still cut from the same tragically immoral cloth that the Nazis and communists ever were. Another experiment that proves this was the Stanford prison experiment.